Hello, everybody. My name's James. Welcome to day three of Correspondent Week, and we've got a banging schedule today. It starts with our West Ham United correspondent, Chris Stones in. How are you, Chris?
Yep, I'm good, thank you, James. Pleased to be here as always. The Correspondence Week.
Good man. Right, let's start with the elephant in the room. I nicked one of your best players, mate.
You did, you did. Yes,
For the
big,
audio
big.
listeners, the grimace on Chris's face was a blinder.
Yeah, there's. I thought there's not beep. You haven't got beeps on it, so I better rein it in. No, it's a bit. It was frustrating. I think the whole manner of the whole thing, how it all came about, and obviously him leaving, going to Tottenham is any sort of your best players or better players going to Tottenham is never good. Going to one of your rivals, as most fans would know. But I think it was just it's just the way he left. Really, he obviously wanted to go, and I think people accepted that. There was some acceptance that maybe it was the time for him to go. Um, Probably a little bit. I wouldn't say divided on the fan base, but obviously people would like him to stay, but I think you're remembering the player that was in the first season, but he wasn't. I don't think he was the same player last year. Um, there's always these things come out after the event, but you hear people sort of talking around it saying, that maybe he was a bit disruptive or he wasn't as harmonious with him in there, but he didn't seem that type of character. But yeah, you just never know. But yeah, it is a blow, him leaving. Obviously what he offers, and I think he'd do well at Spurs. I think he'd certainly make an impact. I think he'd be fired up. I think we could have got more money for him, but I don't know. There didn't seem to be the offers. 55 seems in today's market fairly low
It's the going
for
rate at the
someone.
moment, isn't it? For anything, it seems to be loads of players going around that 55, 60 mark that
Yeah,
play in sort of similar position to him. I think the people like Anthony Elanga, for example, went for a similar amount of money.
but he seemed to want to go to Tottenham. I think that was a key factor in
That's
it.
what's irked, isn't it? Because actually,
Yeah,
it was clear you spent quite a bit last summer. I think it's fair to say, in hindsight, a lot of it not particularly well. Not all of it's worked out. Some of it has, certainly, like Aaron Wan-Bissaka, for example. But you were going to be a little bit restricted this year, and you didn't
yeah.
have many sellable assets. He was clearly one when his best position is very similar to Jarrod Bowen's. So obviously, selling Bowen was not on the agenda. So him going, I think, is fine. What's obviously irked is where he's gone, the
Yeah.
way he's done it. Is there any anger from your perspective that the club have let him go to Tottenham?
Yeah, I think there is a bit of anger towards Sullivan.
There
It's a
always is, isn't
frustrating.
there?
Yeah, I mean there always is. He's that sort of character. I think the frustrating thing with Sullivan is he we seem to go through these patterns where a certain type of manager, maybe someone more high profile or someone with more of a standing who can maybe command more things from the board when they come in. They'll say, well, we want to be in charge of transfers, so they get more um, sort of jurisdiction on the transfers. Doesn't go well, so then the next manager comes in, and then Sullivan seems to want to take over again, and we're in that Sullivan's kind of you know master. We've got that Macaulay there who's supposed to be like the head of recruitment, but it seems to be more driven by Sullivan than that Macaulay. Um, in some respects. So yeah, there was a lot of frustration, I think, around the fact that he was allowed to go. My only guess is that there was either other offers that weren't much, or they weren't what they weren't what the player wanted. I know, obviously, I mean, to be fair, it was being long muted that the two players that would probably be sold, or because we, like you rightly said, we needed to raise funds essentially to be able to buy anyone of any, of any substance, would be Paqueta and Kudus. So I
We'll
don't
come
think it
back
was a
onto
surprise he
Paqueta
left.
in a sec. Kudos an FPL consideration for you, or is it like no bollocks to him?
I think it's two ways of playing it, isn't it? You either play it as a 100% true fan, or you play it as somebody who plays FPL. So he's in my team.
Okay.
He's a good player. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what you think, because obviously you'll know
I
him
love what I've
as in
seen of him
Tottenham.
so far in terms of the player. Um, I'm I'm wavering on the fantasy aspect of it, but we'll speak about that more on obviously the
Yeah,
Tottenham pod later in the week. Lucas Paqueta, you mentioned, now not guilty. That's great news, isn't it?
Yeah, no, that is good news. I mean, it must be hard for him. I mean, it's there's a lot to it. As you know, you could speak sort of 40 minutes just on that if you really went into it all. And I know you and Suj have covered it as well. But um, yeah, I mean, if it just seems crazy to me that it took 2 years for them to come out with the decision, and even when they knew the decision, there seemed to be constant delays. So it's almost like the FA were kind of trying to exert their power. So they've cleared him of all those charges, but there is this thing overhanging slightly, which is the bit about the phone where he didn't, because I think he was given back his phone, and then he was told, they didn't need it. So whatever he did, whatever with it, wiped it, got rid of it, and then they said they needed it again or something. And I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but there's talk of the FA trying to maybe bring in a charge around
Really?
that, around not cooperating or something. Yeah, it's almost like very petty. Like they've not had to get him on that, so they're trying to get him on something minor just to exert their power. And maybe it's to mitigate any legal proceedings, because it has taken a ridiculous amount of time. Um,
Yeah, no, it has. Are you confident that he'll stay?
I'm fairly confident. I think unless a big offer came in, and I think we're talking figures that probably aren't gonna happen. Is eight? I've seen figures of 80 or 90 million. Now,
Well, that's what they were
realistically,
talking about a couple of years ago before the
yeah,
allegations were labelled at him.
I don't think we're going to get that. Is it worth letting him go at 50? Probably not. Um, he seems okay. He seems happy to stay on the basis that West Ham showed him a lot of loyalty and how he's treated by the club. So I think in that respect, he's not there under protest, as it were.
1% owned, 6 million, which is a little bit under the kind of the Kudus bracket. And once you hit below that, you
Yeah,
start struggling a little bit more. 1% owned. We assume on pens, Chris, right?
yeah, he would be on pens. I mean, it's in isolation. I think he's a good midfield pick from West Ham. Trouble is, I think you've got a lot this year around the 6.5 mark, haven't you? You've got players like Ndai at Everton who are probably a little bit more explosive and a higher ceiling. So that's what you're balancing against. But price point at 6 million, yeah, I mean, it could have been maybe 5.5. That would have been, I think, more
Five and a half.
tempting.
That wouldn't be 1% if it was five and a half. That
Yeah.
that 0.5 difference would have been so big, I think. So
Yeah,
I
that's
guess there's
true.
also a what's going to happen with him. But I wonder if we get closer to the deadline, if there might be a bit more interest in him. I don't mind him as a shout. I mean, he's
I mean,
near certain starter as well, isn't he? Now that
yeah,
this
he,
is
he
out of the
will. He,
way.
he will start, and I think he'd be starting in the. He seems to be starting in the centre, but he's not being played out on the left. Things like that. He's been playing quite far forward in the highlights I've seen of the
So,
pre-season games.
am I right in saying in these preseason games we're very much looking at a back three most commonly?
Yes, yeah, it looks
Yeah.
that way. It looks that way. To Bido, Kilman, and Haggard with
Okay.
the back three.
How do you feel about Graham Potter? I have very kind of mixed views from West Ham. And a lot of fans not happy with what they've seen so far since he came into the club, although he was inheriting a bit of a mess. And it didn't help. I keep thinking it didn't help that you had little to play for across the last four
Yeah,
months of the season. You weren't going to qualify for Europe. You weren't going to go down. You went out the FA Cup in the third round. It felt like a 4 month pre-season. I think in many West Ham fans' minds, it means that you need to start quite well. Otherwise, it's like what's been happening over this period. How do you feel about the manager specifically?
um, I think he's had a hard job now. Of whether or not it was in hindsight, I don't think it was a good thing to say. There's he more or less said, there's nothing to play for. We're looking at next season. It's a chance to assess the players. Um, it's tricky because on one hand you're trying to balance expectations of the fans, but then on the other hand it completely writes off the season. And do the players then sort of think, well, okay, well, it's not got that, the games haven't got that same edge. I think he's okay. I don't think we'll do badly with him, but he's not an exciting appointment. Um, if you're expecting excitement, then that's probably you're not going to get it. And I think I mean, from a personal perspective, I just think maybe there's just a level of acceptance this year. I just hope the football is better than it was last year. I think if the football can be, I don't know, let's say worst case scenario, even 20 or 30% better in terms of the spectacle, and we get some results, then he'll be okay. But I think if the results don't come, I think people are because of there's not much to get excited by in terms of the actual football. There's not much patience with him in terms of the fans. They're very quick, I think, to be if the results don't come, they'll be very anti him very quickly, and that will grow.
Okay. What do you, what's in your mind, what's best and worst case scenarios of this season for West Ham?
What in terms of position or just
In terms of where we sit in 9 months, I guess. What's the
um,
what's the best and the worst that could happen here?
I mean, best case scenario
Focusing
is
on
that
league, I guess best case scenario is probably winning the FA Cup, right? But
yeah. I mean,
in terms of league,
I would say top half is probably the best case, um, really, in terms of position. And I think maybe the players gelling or being more cohesive as a unit and more together. And the fact that he's had a pre-season with most of the players, being able to implement his ideas. I mean, there seems to be positive things coming out. And I know you get these social media clips, and they're all a bit kind of
cringe.
scripted, but yeah. There's doesn't seem to be that much dissent from within the camp. No one, and you've had players that have come back from on loan. Like Agger's come back. He didn't want to be at the club. He seems happy to stay now. So if you take that aspect, then you some of it feel like a clutching at straws because we haven't really signed anyone. Worst case scenario is that the fact that we haven't really signed maybe that many quality players. Obviously we've signed that Diouf, and he is good, but we've obviously lost Kudus. Is that we just have that very ordinary nature of what we had last year. Um, Someone gets injured like Fullkrug or or even Bowen, and we're
Yeah,
we're screwed.
that's the worst case scenario in my mind is Bowen gets injured, Fullkrug continues his injury issues. Callum Wilson's obviously had injury issues. You become really short up front for whatever
Yeah.
reason, and you get sucked into trouble. That's the worst case scenario. Obviously, don't think
Yeah.
that'll happen. Are you expecting new additions? And I
Um,
guess not rather than specifically players, where in the team?
Goalkeeper, um, and John seems to be the one going. Sorry, coming in. So he seems to be coming in as a number two. I think if I think there was a feeling that actually Areola isn't maybe the keeper which we hoped he was going to be, and He's made a few. Seems to have turned into Flappy in pre-season. He was against United. He was a bit all over the show and that kind of thing.
Actually,
So
you've been harsh there on Flappy, I think, mate.
oh no, he was anything but Flappy, really.
No,
To be fair,
he was good for you, mate.
Fabianski, he was good, and I think people do have a lot of love for him. Um, but yeah, I think when we're linked with Hermansen from
Leicester.
Leicester, we're looking at 15 or 20 million. I think they wanted 30. So I think we basically we've gone to plan B, gone for a cheaper option and put someone in as a number two to challenge him. Um, Maybe we'll look around. We'll continue looking for someone. But I think for now, Areola he's the number one and it's his to lose, which possibly isn't that difficult. But I'm not sure that John's going to be putting up that much of a challenge, if I'm honest.
Okay, so new keeper incoming. Come back on Areola again in a bit.
Yeah.
New keeper incoming. Where else are we targeting?
Midfield seems to be an area they mentioned, so I think they're obviously looking at the centre. We're a little bit light there. Alvarez seems to be staying, but he picks up injuries or he picks up bookings here and there. He's not been involved yet because I think he was in the Americas tournament. Was it Concaf? Something that was something along those lines.
Yeah, probably would have played for Mexico. Yeah.
So he's playing for Mexico in sort of June, possibly July. So he's not been involved yet. We have got some youngsters coming through, so that's positive. But yeah,
Hold
I think we
hold that thought on the youngsters. Going to cover a couple of them because we might even, as we'll get to, we might even have a
yeah
starter there potentially. I said to you off camera, name I've heard linked with you in sort of circles. around Tottenham at the moment is actually Basuma. Now that Paulinho's gone to Tottenham, one of the midfielders is going to go. Basuma is the most likely. He's got 1 year left on his contract. I've heard a potential figure around about 15 million. Potter's worked for him before. We owe you one. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean it's got some logic to it. I mean he's still his legs are still there, so he's still mobile. I think we need some legs in that centre. That's our problem. Teams can walk through us a little bit too easily at the moment. It's
Okay,
been a problem for a
fixtures.
while.
What do you make of the fixtures? I think a very mixed opinion I see in the FPL community about West Ham's fixtures. What's your thoughts?
Um, it's they're not easy. They are quite mixed. I mean, I think they're not a bad set of fixtures because they're not too easy, so that if you don't get the results, you're thinking, oh shit, now we're in trouble. But at the same time, they're not too hard, and some of them aren't hard or not as hard because of the timing. So, for example, Chelsea is not an easy game, but you're playing them early on, so that might be an advantage, um, or not. And then obviously you've got yourselves, that'd be around the times if you're going into the Champions League and stuff like that. So I'm not quite that'd be just after the international break, won't it? So I think you'll have
Yeah,
the
weekend
Champions League.
before the first European games.
Yeah. So depending on who you get and that kind of thing, that might help us. So they are you've got some hard games in there. You've got Arsenal, you've got Tottenham, you've got Forest, but we don't know what Forest are going to be compared to last year yet. It's always difficult sometimes when a team's had such a really good season, but defensively they're still going to be tough. When I look at it, I think the goal I can see the goal side of it will be could be hard to come by. I don't think we're not going to get more than two in many of those games. But I don't think we're maybe Arsenal potentially and Tottenham if they're on their day, who knows? But I don't think we're on the end of a hiding on any of those. So I think we've got potential to pick up a few results, try and build some momentum, and then after I think it's the first eight, they start to. I wouldn't say even get easier. They just seem very mixed for a long period of time. You're looking, I looked all the way up to something like Liverpool, which is something like game week 12 or so, or maybe even beyond that. And they are very,
I know exactly when Liverpool is, mate. 'Cause it's when I'll probably want to bin your players on wild card in game week 13, mate.
but they are very mixed bag. They're a very mixed bag of results, which people were doing rotations and things like that in defence might be
Yeah.
beneficial.
I'll tell you why I think there's a real split on this. I'll give you an example. So across the first seven, which obviously includes when you go to Arsenal, I've got you essentially up 15th on my ticker out of the 20 teams. But if I go all the way to say game week 10, I've got you fifth. So I think a lot of the opinion in terms of what happens with West Ham's fixtures after the Sunderland game, how people identifying it is in terms of whether it's bad or good, is dependent on the thought process on whether it's a shorter term or a longer term. So if you are wildcarding in game week 8, for example, when there's a bit of a
Yeah,
swing for, say, Chelsea after they play Liverpool, Arsenal as well, then I think you are going to look at that first seven and go, this is shit. If you're like me and looking at it and going, well, actually, I want to go all the way to 13, then it's way more interesting. Particularly with if I'm going with a talisman such as Bowen, who is not necessarily someone I want to dip in and out, go, right,
yeah,
he's a hold for me. Or if I don't want to be pissing about with 4.5 defenders, I'm looking at it over that longer term period and thinking it's good because after that Arsenal game, the fixtures get much better. It's Brentford, Leeds, Newcastle, and then Burnley and Bournemouth before game
yeah,
week 13. And
yeah. You've got
Newcastle game
four.
is bit as at home as well.
Yeah,
So that looks much better. So if I'm looking at that longer term period over the first 12, you show up as one of the best. So I think that's what's influencing a varied opinion at the moment.
yeah. No, that's fair. That's fair.
What do you make of the opening day game at Sunderland? Because obviously on paper you go, right, it's kind of green fixture, newly promoted team, come up via the playoffs, but it's one I'd go, I don't want to go there opening day. I've seen my
No,
team lose at Sunderland opening day after they've been promoted, mate.
I don't want to play a promoted team away on the first game of the season
Not
because they
really.
they always, even if it's a draw, it's a bad result in the sense of other teams will probably go there in 2 months' time and get results. I think the promoted teams are going to struggle. They always do, don't they? How Sunderland do, I don't know. I'd have to listen to the pod and see what the correspondents say on
Oh,
that one.
Spencer's going to be quite bullish. I think you'll hear that at the end of the week.
But I think yeah, it's a tough. It's not an easy first game. It's not oh, that's 3 points. If it's at home, a little bit more confident, but away from home, that's not going to be easy. Not with the fan base that Sunderland have got. They have got good support.
But because of that start, and particularly with a number of people looking at bench boosts potentially in game week 1, it does make you very interesting, particularly again for someone like me who's going maybe bench boost 1, wildcard 13. You
Yeah,
really, really appeal, actually, mate. Let's talk FPL assets. Firstly, the talisman, Jarrod Bowen. The closer it gets to deadline, the more it looks like FPL have been right to reclassify him, Chris. Is that right?
um, it's so hard, isn't it? I mean, we you've had salaries sort of yeah, okay, he's a winger, but he's a forwards, and you've had this debate amongst certain players for what seems like always, you know, and I don't know. He does seem a bit further forwards. He seems to be coming in a bit more central um, in a couple of the friendlies. It's one of those really. I mean, it was disappointing when I first saw it because I thought he's the same similar sort of price as what he was last year, but he's a forward and he's going to get even if he produces the same, he's going to get less points. At the moment, he's not losing a lot of clean sheet points because we don't get many of those anyway. So that's
That's
only
true.
six. That's only 6 points. The thing I think is when you then start looking at it, you look at the other forwards around that price. He's not that bad. There doesn't seem as much in the forward position this year as things stand at the moment. There's probably it seems quite a small pool of players that you would look at. You're looking at maybe sort of 5 or 6 sort of top or good players, and then the rest are kind of a bit meh when
Yeah,
you look at them.
I mean, I thought he'd stay as a midfielder, but the closer it gets, the more I'm comfortable with that decision. It certainly looks like on occasions in pre-season he's playing up front in the front two,
Yeah,
and obviously we know from the data there's a number of times he's played that position last year. If you're sticking with a back three, we may generally be looking at Jarrod Bowen as a centre forward. I thought he'd be priced higher, but I thought he'd be priced higher as a midfielder. So I think they've done quite well with it. And also, there's a number of potentially really good options at zero point 0.5 lower, but many of them carry a little bit of an issue and concern. The one
yeah,
we never have concern about Jarrod Bowen is if he's fit, he is a rare attacking player we can look at and go, I think he'll start 38 games.
yeah. I mean, if he's like you say, if he's fit, he starts and he pretty much plays 90
90
minutes
minutes.
in
Yeah.
in those games. So to have that for forwards is almost quite unusual, isn't it? To some degree in FPL terms. So I think from that point of view, I mean, I didn't have him, and then I sort of went more look at it. I thought, he can score against most teams.
Of course you can.
He, he's not particularly streaky. He's had sort of those periods where he's had that season where he was scoring more at home, but that seems to have kind of pop up anywhere with a goal, and he's consistent in the terms of his output and his minutes. So yeah, if he stays injury free, I don't. He's one of those ones you can just leave there. You can leave him there for most of the season, and it's just one transfer you haven't got to make.
Yeah, look, he's clear talisman, isn't he? Like, it
Yeah,
would be a surprise now if any other player within your squad outscored him from an FPL points perspective. In fact, it's unlikely anyone's going to get anywhere near him.
he's
So,
literally got no competition, and he's got Kudus is the only person who really would play on the right there. He's got no competition there. Not that anyone would be taking his place, but he literally has. If he's slightly off form, there isn't anyone else to come in for him.
and I think that's what leads into the idea of him actually playing as part of a two. With
Yeah,
occasion, it will drop off, move wide, and you might have Paqueta moving into kind of left half space channels from the midfield three. That feels like the natural setup at the moment, the way it's going. Lots of interest in Fullkrug at the moment. It's a decent pre-season. He's fit, importantly. 6 million. We know his capability, particularly if the delivery's right from crosses. But England international, Callum Wilson has joined you, Chris. They use England international because those are West Ham's words, not mine. Wilson's also been priced up at 6 million. I guess first and foremost, how do you feel about the prospects of Fullkrug? No one's going to start with Wilson, so how do you feel about Fullkrug?
what was an EP option or just in?
Yeah, 2 million
Um,
saving on Bowen.
I mean, you could. I think it all depends on who else. So if you haven't got Bowen, what are the other forwards? And like you say, they've all got potential issues. Um, if you're doing it to save money because you want, I don't know, you want another big hitter or something, then fair enough. But he's not going to match Bowen. I mean, he would definitely do if he stays fit. He would do all right. And I think having Diouf as well, I think the when you see those crosses, the balls coming in, they're going to be difficult for defenders to handle. I think there's more. He's basically got some. He's got something to feed off now, and he does link up play. So he's not just going to get headed goals. He links up plays and links up play and brings people in, and will probably get a few assists. So his score okay as a 6 million, yeah, but then you're not going to have him and Bowen. So that's that's the trade off. Like you say, it's 2 million cheaper, but don't expect to get the same points as Bowen. But if he starts well, then people will start piling in, won't they?
Potentially, I think there wouldn't be any doubt on him starting at the moment as long as he comes through the next
No,
10 days or so
it definitely start.
unscathed.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
absolutely agree with that. Wilson obviously be well behind in terms of pre-season. I know the majority of Newcastle fans certainly felt it was time for Callum Wilson to move on. All I'd add in, I do think Wilson is probably better suited to Potter's style of play than Fullkrug. So I think you have to adapt to Fullkrug. Like if you are not going to deliver balls into the box, is part why
yeah,
we'll speak about Diouf in a minute. Like it can work, but I think in terms of the setup, Wilson's probably a better fit for that generally. And I think as we move on in weeks, that would be a little bit concerning for me.
yeah. I mean, you could see it's probably that they're both obviously Wilson's. Well, I say older. He's only about a year older, isn't he? So I think if Antonio was staying, we'd have the oldest forward line in the Premier League. I think Fullkrug could be the youngster at 33. Um, so he's going to probably play 70 minutes, and then it makes sense then for Wilson to come on. Obviously, he can have an impact because he's still got a little bit of pace, but there's no point starting with Wilson because you want him playing against either when the game's slightly more open, if the other team's chasing the game, or if use whatever pace he's got left. But he's not going to be able to. Wilson's not going to play significant minutes, and I think maybe with Fullkrug's injury, I think his minutes not so much managed, but I think they will. If there's an opportunity to take him off in games, they'll use that. They'll take him off with 15, 20 minutes, and that might impact things like bonuses and stuff like that.
If we suddenly had something happened where, Bowen was out for a month, would that change your thought process on Fullkrug to make you think, yeah, do you know what, I really want that at the start? Or is it also a consequence if Bowen then isn't there, then that's way worse for the team?
I think it is. I mean, I know Bowen obviously scores, but he does assist, and he he
He'll
he
take people away because
he'll take people
people
away.
don't
He's
want
a
to get
focal
left one on
point
one and stuff.
where I mean, Fulkrug is not. Yeah, it just make it even harder for him, really, because there's no one to come in Bowen's place who's going to suddenly maybe play to Fulkrug's style, as you rightly say. Um, so I think it would limit his appeal rather than enhance it.
Okay, let's talk about these wing backs because we've got one who's the most owned defender in FPL at the time of recording, and one that's slowly on the grow in terms of his ownership. But as it still stands, Aaron Wan-Bissaka still has well over 10 times the ownership of your new signing, El Hadji Malick Diouf. Which one are you buying, Chris? Or is it neither?
Um, I was I was undecided because you got almost three options. Because I know obviously when the defensive contributions come out, Kilman was kind of put up there. But then I think since I've had time to look at it would have been Wan-Bissaka. I'm airing towards Diouf, and the reason for that when I had it. Funny enough, I was looking yesterday. I was curious myself just on the season. I know obviously at different clubs, um, but looking at all of the so Wan-Bissaka is basically above on nearly everything. He's ahead on the recoveries, the clearances, the tackles, interceptions, dribbles. But I think Diouf offers the assists. I guess the thing early on would I'd be wary of is that if not a lot seems not as much seems to be going down the right as it was. The other appeal with Diouf is you might have said, well, what about Emerson? Emerson's not been involved, so he's not been involved at all in the squad. So the only competition that Diouf has got is really Scarles at the back, who's a youngster. He's probably not going to take his place. Diouf seems to be playing a lot more further forward. In a couple of the games, he's played almost as a winger in the games, and his delivery is very good. If it went badly wrong, I don't think you're going to lose much value in Diouf. But there's a danger with Wan-Bissaka being so highly owned that if either he or West Ham don't do very well, or Diouf does better than Wan-Bissaka, that people start selling him off, and you could all of a sudden you can sit in a 0.2, 0.3 loss after 3 or 4 weeks. I think
Yeah,
it's a good time.
probably longer than that. I mean, because of the
Yeah,
ownership, it will take a little bit longer for the price to probably fall and stuff. Although
yeah,
FPL do always slightly tweak their algorithms, so we can't be too sure on that. Yeah, I'd take that on board because I think as well. Again, it depends what you're doing in terms of strategy, etc. And it might be for some people they literally just want it for game week 1 as part of a bench boost. They're going to wildcard
yeah,
early. It doesn't particularly matter. Get that. And I'd certainly see the appeal of Diouf under that scenario. I obviously don't want to piss about with this choice. Whoever I pick is going to stay there, and I'm probably using it maybe max half the games. I think my concern with Diouf is the closer we get, the more I'm coming to a conclusion with defenders that I want to almost wipe out the ability to create an assist. If I'm picking a defender for any offensive reasons, I think I need them to be someone who's going to score regularly enough. Someone like a Daniel Munoz. And obviously at 4.5 doesn't have to be to that volume. But to give an example, we spoke about Anthony Robinson with Lewis. Great, 11 attacking returns last year, but all assists. Right, but I can get a defender for the same price that's going to pick me up that number now in DEFCONs.
yeah,
So it changes the game. And Wan-Bissaka, in a weird way, if he's going to play, you're even saying maybe a little bit deeper than what he did on a
yeah.
lot of occasions last year, which will take away some of the potential attacking threat. But it might even be even better for him from the DEFCON perspective.
I guess it's one of those you've almost got a pretty much you know what you're going to get with Wan-Bissaka. He's played in the Premiership. You know what he's going to get in FPL with Wan-Bissaka. So you've got that's the safe option. Um, but there's always that element at the start of the season where you want to try and be a little bit different sometimes. And
Yeah.
I think it's not depending on what your reasons are for doing it. It's a risk, but I think with the price aspects, I think that's for me that's a risk I'd be willing to take. I mean, you don't know how he's going to convert because he was playing in the league he was playing in before wasn't the strongest, but he did get 7 goals last year. So
Okay. So that was going
um,
to be kind of the follow-up question. Can Diouf add something even more here, a layer here where we're saying, yeah, I think you can get me a goal every 7, 8 games or something.
yeah, I mean the only thing he beats Wan-Bissaka on, and obviously it's different clubs, different leagues, so you have to take it with a pinch of salt. Is the shots taken, shots on target, and accurate crosses, a number of crosses. So I guess he's potentially offering goals and assists, but he's a little bit of an unknown in the league. So there is that aspect.
You're going Diouf, aren't you?
I am now. I think because I think if Wan-Bissaka's ownership wasn't as high, if it was say like 9% or 10%, I'd probably go Wan-Bissaka. But I
Yeah,
think the
I'm
fact it's so,
conscious of it as well.
I think that's what's swaying me the most. Whenever and I don't think it's going to go horribly wrong. It's not like we've got I don't know. I mean, okay, the worst case scenario is if we get a couple of clean sheets, obviously they both benefit. Is that um, if we do well in games, Juve's probably going to get something. He's probably going to get close to Wan-Bissaka. It'll be the games like Chelsea and Tottenham where maybe Juve gets a 2 and Wan-Bissaka gets a 4 points.
There's definitely a movement towards Diouf, and I can highlight in this way. Suj tweeted pretty much at midnight on Sunday night. Obviously, he played your last
Mhm.
game in America on Sunday, and he took a screen grab of Wan-Bissaka and Diouf's ownership, and literally just tweeted, I know which one I'm going to go with in FPL. He hasn't specifically said which one, the cheeky bastard, so he can change his mind. But I know he means going for Diouf.
Yeah.
So Wan-Bissaka was 32.3% owned. Time recording, that's now 31.8. Diouf was 1.2%. That's now double at 2.4% at the time recording on Tuesday morning. So his ownership has doubled over essentially the last 18 hours or so. So that movement is now beginning because more people are looking at it and talking about it and going, yeah, hang on a second here. It could be Diouf.
I mean, because he got 2 assists as well at the weekend, that people are going
There
to look at
is
that, and
the
he and
influence of
he
that.
and he was the player that you see, that kind of stands out. So there's that preseason aspect, but it's
Yeah,
an interesting one.
I haven't decided yet. I want to think about it a little more and I want to do a bit more own personal research on Diouf because I think for me to go Diouf over Wan-Bissaka, I want to believe that there can be a goal in there to go with it for me. Wan-Bissaka, I know exactly what I'm going to get, I think,
Yeah,
and he will get some def cons just from the likes of tackles and
yeah,
blocks
no,
alone.
he definitely will. I mean, he's not going to be if you left him there, for example, you didn't worry about the price on him because he's always going to contribute. He's going to contribute in games whether we're winning or losing. Then if price has no impact on your decision whatsoever, then probably Wan-Bissaka would be the one that you would go with for the safe option.
The only final bit I'd say in terms of that duel, I think it's a three-way duel. You mentioned Kilman. I wouldn't rule it out. As soon as the DEFCONs was announced, I looked at kind of best performers last year on a number of different, just looking at the individual metrics. And there were four players who regularly kind of showed up repetitively. And Max Kilman was one of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I looked at it, he was, I've got it on there now, actually, compared to him to Wan-Bissaka, he was something like 30 odd points or 36 points difference. So you can probably make that up in terms of the DEFCON points. The bits that are known is how much influence that has on the bonus. Because obviously Wan-Bissaka did get some bonus. So for example, Kilman is now getting the bonus because of his defensive contributions, and Wan-Bissaka wasn't getting as much.
Mm.
Then that would be a factor. But I think, yeah, it's still a bit unknown, isn't it? Really, how it's going to play out the DEFCONs, because you can work out, okay, they're going to get some points because of the specific, the clearances and the recoveries, but we don't know maybe how it's going to look when it comes to the bonuses. Um,
Yeah, I
yeah,
think I wouldn't be surprised if we're sitting here in 3, 4 months and it's like, it's not either of them wing backs, it's Kilman.
I mean,
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised.
I think he's got to make up, assuming that Wan-Bissaka does the same as what he did last year. He's got to make up 30, 35, 40 points to surpass Wan-Bissaka. Wan-Bissaka will also be getting extra points as
Yeah,
well.
but also one thing with Kilman, we've always said this about him. He's not, despite his frame and size, for whatever reason, he's not a big threat on set plays. Now, it
No,
might be something that actually he improves that. Most people obviously regress with age. Him with his experience, it might even be something that improves. So if you can add that, where, and we're not talking about going mental here, but even just to go at 4 goals a season, for example,
yeah,
you're potentially looking at 18 points, bits of bonus to go with that, maybe. That could close the gap as well.
yeah, yeah. There's that as well. I mean, again, they're all priced at 4.5, so it's not you haven't got it's not that different conversation where one's 5 and one's 4.5, so you gravitate to the cheaper one. So there's not it'd be interesting to see how it plays out. I've got to admit,
Yeah.
but Kilman's, yeah, for that reason that you've, like, all those things that you said, is maybe not one to rule out, but I think I'd go with the others and see how the defensive contribution thing kind of plays out with the bonuses.
Yeah. Kilman's a lock in the team as well. I don't think we need to really kind of cover off the other
No,
defenders too much. I just had a note, obviously, on Cole Walker-Peters has obviously joined you, and he can play right and left. So that's another
yeah,
one that could potentially come in for Diouf, whether it's coverage, rotation, whatever. But with you playing once a week for, I mean, the first few months, I wouldn't be concerned about it. If you say just first choice, he'll play the majority of games. Wan-Bissaka, we know it's kind of unquestionable.
and obviously Wan-Bissaka's going. Well, be going off to AFCON, won't he? So then that would be Carl Walker-Peters coming in.
Yeah, that's miles away, Chris.
So yeah,
Diouf won't be going in on my wild card in game at 13 if I make it that far. Let's talk to keepers briefly. So we're expecting John to come in and join.
yeah.
But you don't think first choice?
No, no. I mean, it was. I think I sort of heard a few sort of things on ex West Ham employee and their sort of podcast and stuff. So the noises seem to be that Areola's number one and he's coming in to challenge. I think it would have been different if we'd signed someone more high profile in terms of keeper or spent more money. I think we've gone for plan B in this and gone for a cheaper option to challenge in. I think there is a longer term view that Areola's not quite the right man for the job, and it seems to be that it's the coaches, and ironically, one of them is Adrian, who used to obviously play for us. So I think he's been sort of involved in that, I believe.
Has he just joined, Adrian?
I
He didn't
don't.
go for
I'm not,
Betis in the Conference League final,
yeah, I
wasn't he?
thought so. I heard someone said Adrian, but I don't not actually checked if it's the same one or
Can't
someone.
be. He played for
It can't,
Betis in the Conference League
that's
final,
what I
didn't he?
thought. Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, so I didn't think it could be, so don't quote me on that. I think it's this. But anyway, the goalkeeping coaches have basically said we need to sign a
If
keeper.
Adrian was with you, Chris, he'd probably start.
Well, he would, yeah. Ironically, after some of his mishaps, but yeah,
I guess it makes Areola just an awkward choice
yeah,
for FPL.
he's awkward because I'd like to say safe, but
It's
basically, if
not.
someone had a gun to my head, I wouldn't say yes to it because
You
he's that way.
also famously on this podcast a couple of years ago um, got it right with the keepers. Was it Areola or Fabianski started? I can't remember which way round it was, but everyone thought it would be the other way round, and you went,
Yeah,
no, it'd be this one. And so many people, it was like the biggest thing out of Correspondent Week. What's he talking about? And you were
I
absolutely spot on.
think it's Areola. I'm
I
sure it
think it
was,
was.
but I think it definitely start. But I think he's one. If he has two or three bad games and they're clangers, then they're looking for a reason to drop him. Put it that way. But
Yeah,
that's not imminent, and I'm not sure that Johns is going to be this safe pair of hands.
I think if people are looking a little bit longer term, so want something to sit there for sort of 12 weeks or
Mm,
so, I would say avoid strongly.
yeah,
And
I
particularly
agree.
when we've got three other defensive assets at the same price, which look pretty good. I'd find a way of manoeuvring that. But just tell me, in terms of game week one specifically, percentage in your mind of Areola starting?
I'd say 95%.
Yeah, strong enough, mate. Strong enough.
That's
Okay.
I
Because
don't
a
I
lot of
don't
people will just want him for the bench boost, I think, and
yeah,
then maybe move on.
yeah.
All right, let's briefly just wrap up on some midfielders. Um, Freddie Potts, 4.5. Suj told me last week he thinks there's every chance he's going to start game week one, but I trust Chris's view more. Go on, mate.
There's a good chance he has played in the latter pre-seasons and he's done all right. Um he's he's got the legs in there. I think it all depends on if we sign someone like I know you mentioned Basuma. If we sign Basuma and Basuma's ready to go, then he could come in. I think he probably will because he's the most defensive out of the midfielders that we've got, other than Alvarez, who's not ready to come in. He's not been involved. So I think certainly for game week one, I would I'd say there's probably about a 75% chance he starts.
Okay, it's pretty good. I guess if he starts the final friendly, looks strong, right?
Yeah, that's what I'd probably look at. I'd look at that. If someone else comes in instead, um, or he comes off after 45 minutes or something, but then even that can be misleading because they could have, already made their mind up and they're kind of keeping him back. But the fact he's young, I don't think they'd need to do that. Um, I mean, when you look at who's there, it's Souček. Souček doesn't seem to have been involved as much in pre-season
It's
in the
not
games.
it's not a Potter player. I know he's been incredible
No,
for you. It's not a Potter player, mate.
no. And I mean, Ward Prowse has been doing all right, but he's effort wise and everything else and attitude, you can't fault him. But obviously you need a pair of legs in midfield, so someone who can get around the pitch. So he does do that. He's played his last 2 years in the Championship, so he's had minutes in competitive leagues, um, albeit not at, maybe the best teams in those leagues, but he's done okay. He's done well there, so he's got an opportunity. It's just long term, he's gonna be in the squad, but he's probably not going to be starting every week. But I think game week one, if you need the budget and you want a 4.5, then it's always a risk. It's always a risk with someone like that.
What is he like? Who would he be in terms of your squad? Who would he be most comparable to?
Some people have sort of compared him to Noble, which I think he's not that
Okay.
immobile.
He ain't still playing, Chris. I know you're a bit of a dad's army, but
I know, but yeah, I think that's where he's been. He's a he's not. He might get the odd assist here and there, but he's a kind of win the ball back, play it
yeah.
on.
I'll just clarify on Potts. He's not going to be on penalties as well. For no.
No, 100% not going to be on penalties. Not in a million years.
Just a word on Somerville.
So
We haven't seen him for 8 months.
no, he's obviously working his way back. I've heard that he's due back. I think it's even on the West Ham site saying that he's looking forward to the squad being back. So I think he didn't go in. He didn't go with them on the tour, but I think he's ready to start training with the team now. Certainly not going to be ready in the first couple of game weeks, but I think there's a view that he'll be working his way back sooner rather than later.
Yeah, mention that as well because he has come in at 5.5. And I think if he'd played football for the last 8 months, he wouldn't be. And it might be one, maybe even in the second half of the season, we're all looking at going, could be. You look at
Yeah.
that bracket, who's going to be like the Rodgers, the Semenyos, the Clivers, who's it going to be this year? Might be Crescencio Somerville a little bit later on. Go on then, Chris, finish up. Go and predict the team to play at Sunderland.
So it'd be Areola, then Wan-Bissaka, Tobido, Agard, Kilman, Diouf. I think Ward-Prowse, Potts, Paqueta, Bowen, and Fullkrug.
Yeah, I'd probably have that the same at the moment, with the caveat that if you did sign Basuma, I think you'd go straight in.
Yeah, I agree. That would be
Or
the
someone
only.
similar. With Basuma, he's had a full pre-season with Tottenham. So you've got to be conscious when a new player comes in quite often at this stage, you go, I'm not sure if he'd start. I think he'd go straight in. That's a kind of a rare one at this stage. Chris, thank you, mate. Anything else you want to plug before we finish up?
No, I think we've done good there. Covered a lot. So thank you.
Good stuff, mate. I look forward to speaking to you again when I speak to you next with Ricky Saunders ahead of the Kudus, the Judas Derby, ahead of game
Can't
week
wait.
4 on Clash of the Correspondents. But thank you very much, my friend. Good luck for the season. It's a Correspondent week and a Planet FPL debut next for Alex Trembath, who's our new Manchester United correspondent. That's going to be next up on Correspondent week. Just leaves me to say thanks very much to Chris. Good luck to the season, mate. Be nice to each other, everyone. Cue music, please, man child.